2 days before the Titanic met its fate, Captain W. Wood of the SS Etonian captured a chilling photograph of a massive iceberg while crossing the Atlantic. He carefully wrote down its coordinates, placing it frighteningly close to where the Titanic would later strike an iceberg on April 14, 1912. The black and white image shows a towering wall of ice, silent and menacing, rising out of the sea like a frozen giant. AI analysis of this photograph today confirms an eerie match with the sketches made by survivors who described the iceberg that ended the Titanic's voyage. When Wood reached New York, he developed the photo and boldly inscribed on it his belief that this was the iceberg responsible for the disaster. Modern forensic study of its shape and surface markings has revealed striking accuracy, chillingly aligning with historical accounts. To see this picture now, knowing what would follow, is to stare directly at a fragment of history. It is not just an image of ice. It is a ghostly witness, a frozen clue to one of the greatest tragedies ever at sea. This haunting photograph stands as one of the few physical artifacts directly tied to the moment Titanic's fate was sealed. Deadly flaws in life vests. The Titanic was praised for its safety, carrying more than 2,000 cork and canvas life vests, one for every passenger and crew member on board. At first glance, these heavy vests seemed like a symbol of security. Photographs show their thick cork pads stitched inside coarse canvas, tied only with thin straps around the waist. Yet survivor stories paint a darker truth. When passengers were forced to jump into the freezing Atlantic, the buoyancy of the vests sometimes caused fatal injuries. The powerful lift could snap necks, knock people unconscious, or slam them against wreckage in the waves. For some, the life vests became more dangerous than protective. Still, they kept others afloat just long enough to be rescued, though hypothermia claimed most before help arrived. Today, only a handful of original Titanic life vests survive, faded and torn by salt water. One sold at auction for $119,000, a sobering relic of tragedy. These vests remind us that even the best intentions of safety can fail under real disaster. They are silent testaments, soaked in the cost of human lives, and a haunting reminder that survival at sea requires more than equipment. It demands preparation, foresight, and above all, enough lifeboats that never arrived. The Boy with a Spinning Top in April 1912, just days before the disaster, a photograph was taken on the Titanic's deck that has become one of the most haunting images of the voyage. It shows 6-year-old first-class passenger Robert Douglas Spedden playing happily with a spinning top, the polished wood of the deck gleaming beneath his feet. Enhanced with modern AI, the picture now reveals even finer details. The weave of his small coat, the shine of his shoes, and the railings of the great ship reflected faintly on the boards. Robert's family had no idea this simple moment of childhood play would become frozen in time, tied forever to the tragedy ahead. When the Titanic struck the iceberg, Robert was fast asleep. His nurse gently woke him, whispering that they were going out to see the stars. He was carried to safety aboard a lifeboat, escaping the fate that claimed so many. But the boy's story carries an even sadder turn. Just 3 years later, Robert was killed in one of the earliest recorded car accidents in Maine. This single photograph, innocent yet tragic, is more than a glimpse of a child at play. It is a reminder of life's fragility, of fleeting joy against looming disaster, and of the personal stories hidden behind Titanic's larger tale. Titanic's gem of luxury. Among the many marvels of Titanic's design was a space that seemed almost futuristic for 1912. The ship's gymnasium. Located on the boat deck near the grand staircase, it offered wealthy passengers a chance to stay active while at sea. Inside, there were electric camels and horses, rowing machines, punching bags, and stationary bicycles, all under the watchful eye of physical instructor T.W. Macaulay. Photographs of this room, now enhanced by AI, show the shine of polished oak panels, faint scuff marks on the wooden floor, and even smudges on the mirrors left by eager hands. The gymnasium was popular with first-class travelers, each paying a shilling for a session, though few realized these would be their last days of leisure. Macaulay himself was admired for his dedication, reportedly remaining at his post until the very eve of the sinking, where he perished with the ship. In these photographs, we see not just machines and luxury, but echoes of energy, laughter, and determination from passengers who never imagined their strength would soon be tested in icy waters. The gym stands as a haunting symbol of Titanic's blend of innovation and tragedy, a place of health and vigor that became, in the end, part of a floating tomb. Lifeboats waiting in vain, one of the most haunting photographs of Titanic before her final voyage shows her lifeboats neatly stowed beside the bridge, captured by Reverend F.M. Brown, who disembarked before disaster struck. At first glance, the boats look ready and reliable, waiting to serve their purpose if ever needed. Titanic carried 20 lifeboats in total, enough for about 178 people, barely half of those on board. Outdated maritime laws required only that number, not realizing a tragedy of this scale was possible. AI scaling of the photo confirms what experts later proved. Had the ship been fitted with twice as many lifeboats, nearly everyone could have been saved. Worse still, on that freezing April night, many of the existing boats were launched only half full. Officers feared the lowering mechanism might fail if loaded to full capacity, wasting precious seats that could have held hundreds more. Adding to the irony, a lifeboat drill had been scheduled for the very morning of April 14, but was abruptly canceled. Looking back at this photograph, the lifeboats appear as silent bystanders, vessels that should have been humanity's shield, yet became emblems of wasted potential and lost lives. They waited in vain, just as many aboard did, for salvation that never came. A compromised whole theory beneath Titanic's gleaming beauty lay a vulnerability few suspected. Photographs from her construction at Harland and Wolff show the ship's massive hull plates, held together by over 3 million iron and steel rivets. To the workers who hammered them in by hand, it was a triumph of industry. Yet decades later, journalist Senan Molyneux and other researchers uncovered a chilling possibility. A coal bunker fire may have weakened a critical section of the hull before Titanic even set sail. AI thermal imaging of the old construction photos reveals faint signs of heat distortion along one stretch of plating, right where the iceberg would later strike. Survivors recalled fire, blackened walls in the coal bunkers, suggesting the blaze had been burning secretly for days. If true, Titanic's fate may have been sealed before she ever left port. When she collided with the iceberg, the already weakened hull could have ruptured more easily, allowing water to flood at a devastating pace. This theory remains debated among historians, yet it adds a haunting twist. The disaster may not have been solely nature's doing, but partly a human failure ignored in the name of pride and schedule. The photographs of Titanic's hull are no longer just engineering marvels. They may be evidence of doom hidden in plain sight. Faces on launch day on May 31, 1911, more than 100,000 people crowded the docks of Belfast to witness Titanic's grand launch into the River Lagan. Photographs from that day show cheering crowds, workers, families, and curious onlookers, their faces frozen in a moment of pride and excitement. AI facial recognition has since matched some of those dockside spectators to later images taken at Queenstown, days before Titanic's final departure. Strangely, one man appears in both sets of photographs, yet no record places him as passenger or crew. Who was he, and why was he there? Enhancements of the images bring startling detail: the gleam of wet cobblestones, banners fluttering in the breeze, and the strain on workers' faces as 22 tons of soap and tallow eased the great hull into the water. The entire launch lasted just 62 seconds, a breathtaking moment of triumph for shipbuilders and locals alike. But what the crowd saw as glory was in truth the beginning of tragedy. For those caught in the photograph, unaware of what was to come, Their smiles carry an eerie weight. They were not just witnesses to engineering history. They were unknowingly present at the first chapter of one of the world's greatest disasters. The second-class dining room deep within Titanic, on D-deck, stood the second-class dining room, a space designed to rival the first-class standards of many other ships of its era. It could seat nearly 400 passengers at long mahogany tables bolted firmly to the floor, while the crimson upholstery gave the room a sense of warmth and dignity. Photographs enhanced with AI now reveal the fine carvings on the paneling and even a faint inscription, April 10, possibly etched by a passenger, marking the date of departure. For second-class travelers, this dining room offered not just meals but an experience of comfort and refinement, with menus nearly identical in preparation to those served in first class. After dinner, a small band would often play, filling the space with music, while families and travelers from all walks of life shared conversations and hopes for their new lives in America. Though less opulent than the grand salons above, this dining hall embodied a quiet elegance, capturing the spirit of those who were neither the wealthiest nor the poorest on board. Looking at the surviving photographs today, we are reminded that these tables once held laughter, dreams, and lives, all of which would soon be tested by the icy waters of the Atlantic. Mystery in the reading room, on a deck. Near the elegant first-class lounge stood the reading and writing room, a quiet retreat designed mainly for women. It was furnished with silk-upholstered chairs, tall windows, and Georgian-style decor, creating an atmosphere of refinement and calm. Here, passengers could borrow a book, write letters home, or simply enjoy the silence away from Titanic's bustling decks. Yet one surviving photograph of the room holds a chilling mystery. When enhanced with AI contrast analysis, the image reveals a faint silhouette of a figure seated at the far window, someone never identified. The presence is eerie, as records suggest the room was rarely used during the voyage, making the shadowy occupant all the more puzzling. Was it a passenger lost to history, or simply an unexplained trick of light? Details emerge in the photo: the curve of the silk chairs, the gleam of polished wood, and sunlight diffused through heavy curtains. For those who entered, this room symbolized peace and reflection. But today, the image feels heavy with secrets. The mysterious figure lingers, silently reminding us that Titanic was not just a ship of luxury, but also a stage of unanswered questions that continue to haunt more than a century later. Smoking room before the end. The first-class smoking room on Titanic was a place of comfort and tradition, reserved for men who wished to play cards, drink, or talk in luxury. It was decorated with rich mahogany, stained glass windows, and even a fireplace crowned by Norman Wilkinson's painting approach to the New World. Photographs of this room, now enhanced with AI colorization, bring back the warm glow of the lamps, the polished wood, and the fine patterns of the stained glass. Survivor accounts describe how passengers lingered here late into the night of April 14, 1912, unaware that disaster loomed just hours away. Men gathered around tables, shuffling cards and laughing, while smoke curled into the air. Among them were notable figures like Major Archibald Butt and artist Francis Millet, who would later vanish into the icy Atlantic. Some chose to stay in the smoking room even after the collision, perhaps out of shock, pride, or a refusal to face what awaited outside. In these images, the room looks alive with comfort. Yet it became one of the last places where Titanic's luxury still masked the unfolding horror. To look at the smoking room now is to see a frozen moment of calm, just before history shattered into chaos. Riveting danger in the whole Titanic's creation was a marvel of early 20th century engineering, but hidden in its very bones lay a flaw that may have hastened its destruction. Photographs from the shipyard at Harland and Wolff show workers driving more than 3 million rivets into place, binding the massive steel plates of the hull together. Many of these rivets were hammered in by hand, without safety gear, in grueling conditions. AI-enhanced analysis of these old images reveals imperfections so small they were once invisible. Tiny cracks, uneven heads, and weak iron mixed into the forward rivets. Later studies of recovered wreckage confirmed that some rivets snapped under extreme pressure, leaving seams vulnerable to tearing when the iceberg struck. These photographs, meant to celebrate progress, now carry a darker weight. They show the dangerous labor, the shortcuts taken, and the small but deadly weaknesses that could doom even the unsinkable ship. For the men who risked their lives building her, the rivets represented pride and achievement. Yet in hindsight, they may also represent the chain's weakest link. What once appeared as strength is now seen as fragility. Evidence that Titanic's fate may have been sealed by the very hands that built her. Captain Smith's final inspection. A rare candid photograph captures Captain Edward J. Smith walking the decks of Titanic in the final days before disaster. At first glance, it shows only a routine inspection, the calm stride of a seasoned mariner ensuring his ship was in perfect order. But when AI enhancement was applied, two crew members appeared faintly in the background, later matched through genealogy to descendants who had never known their relatives served aboard the doomed liner. Smith, often called the millionaire's captain, for his popularity with wealthy travelers, carried immense responsibility on Titanic's maiden voyage. He was admired for his composure, yet decisions made under his command, such as canceling the scheduled lifeboat drill on April 14, remain bitterly debated by historians. The photograph reveals the gleam of brass railings, the crisp folds of Smith's uniform, and the determined set of his jaw. Looking at it now, it is difficult not to feel the weight of fate pressing down upon him, for within days he would be charged with leading more than 200 souls through chaos. This image is no longer just a snapshot of duty. It is a portrait of a man unknowingly walking into the greatest trial of his life and his final command. Children at play on deck. Among the rarest photographs of Titanic is one that captures a moment of pure innocence. Children chasing a ball across the ship's open deck. The picture, at first simple and joyful, becomes almost unbearable when viewed with the knowledge of what awaited them. AI enhancement of the image brings out tiny details, the white Star Line logo faintly visible on the ball, the stitching on a child's coat, and the polished boards shining under the spring sunlight. Many of these children were emigrants, leaving behind their homelands to begin new lives in America with their families. For them, Titanic was more than a ship. It was hope made real. First-class children, meanwhile, had the freedom of spacious promenades and games on the deck, their laughter echoing among the railings. Survivors later recalled how, even as the ship shuddered against the iceberg, some children slept peacefully, unaware of the danger. To see them playing in this photograph is to glimpse the stark contrast between life's carefree moments and the cruelty of fate. These small figures remind us that Titanic's tragedy was not just about a ship, but about families and futures cut short. The ball they chased never rolled into tomorrow, only into history's sorrow. The grand staircase reimagined, perhaps no space aboard Titanic has captured the imagination more than her grand staircase. Yet no confirmed photographs of it exist. What we know comes from her sister ship, Olympic, and from modern digital reconstructions. With AI restoration, historians have pieced together the sweeping oak banisters, ornate wrought iron railings, and the great glass dome above that bathed the space in sunlight. This staircase was more than wood and iron. It was the beating heart of first-class life, where passengers descended in gowns and tuxedos, meeting in elegance before dining or evening strolls. Descriptions from survivors speak of the gentle glow of chandeliers, the intricate paneling, and the hushed grandeur that defined the space. Today, reconstructions allow us to virtually walk down its steps, imagining the hum of voices and the rustle of fine fabrics. But what was once a place of beauty became a path to desperation as survivors recalled crowds pushing toward these stairs in the final hours, searching for lifeboats above. The grand staircase stands now as a ghostly symbol, a blend of Titanic's unmatched luxury and its doomed fragility. To envision it is to stand at the very crossroads of elegance and tragedy, where the ship's story still echoes. The crew muster photograph, one surviving photograph of Titanic's crew assembled for muster appears, at first glance, like a simple group portrait. Rows of uniformed men stand together, faces steady, unaware of the role they were about to play in history. Yet AI enhancement reveals something more. One man clutching a folded paper, the edges peeking from between his fingers. Historians speculate it could have been an iceberg warning, perhaps one of several messages reportedly received, but not fully heeded. The thought adds a chilling undertone to what seems an ordinary moment. The photo also shows details often overlooked: polished brass buttons, the proud tilt of caps, and the wariness in the eyes of men who worked long, demanding hours. Muster was meant to ensure discipline and readiness for emergencies, but evidence later suggested drills were not enforced as strictly as they should have been. Many of these men would remain at their posts until the very end, operating pumps, engines, and lights to give others a chance at survival. Looking at this photograph today, we see more than a lineup of sailors. We see courage, duty, and perhaps an unspoken knowledge of the dangers ahead. Their steady gaze feels like a silent promise, one tragically fulfilled in icy waters. The Marconi Room messages, hidden deep within Titanic, was a small chamber that became the ship's lifeline. The Marconi Room. It housed the wireless telegraph equipment, operated by Jack Phillips and Harold Bride, two young men whose tireless efforts would save hundreds of lives. In a surviving photograph, AI enhancement reveals remarkable details: an open logbook resting on the desk with faint words scribbled. Ice Report 14 April. That simple entry now reads like a warning written in fading ink. The room itself was cramped, filled with wires, dials, and the constant hum of sparks. For most passengers, it was just another curiosity. But on the night of April 14, 1912, it became the heartbeat of survival. Phillips and Bride worked without pause, sending out frantic distress calls even as water rushed into the decks below. Their signals reached ships miles away, including the Carpathia, which raced through dangerous waters to rescue survivors. The Marconi Room was more than just technology, it was the last voice of Titanic, crying out into the darkness. Today, the enhanced photograph allows us to almost step into that moment. The flicker of lamps, the scrawl of messages, and the courage of two men who tapped SOS until the very end. Sunrise on the... Some leaned against the railings, speaking of plans in New York, while others quietly admired the horizon. Yet to us, this image is unbearably heavy. That same deck would soon echo with cries of fear, the scrape of lifeboats, and the rush of desperate footsteps. The serenity of the photograph feels cruel in hindsight, a frozen moment of beauty standing in sharp contrast to the chaos that would follow. AI enhancements reveal even more detail: faint reflections on the deck's polished boards, the outline of railings casting long shadows, the stillness of a world that had no idea its greatest ship was living on borrowed time. This sunrise picture reminds us how quickly peace can vanish, how close hope and tragedy can stand side by side on history's stage. Kitchens at full steam beneath Titanic's elegance lay a world of tireless labor. Its vast kitchens. A rare photograph shows chefs and staff standing proudly among gleaming copper pots, tiled walls, and polished cooking ranges. AI restoration brings new clarity: the shine of utensils, the neat stacks of plates, and even a menu card on a shelf, now legible as listing the very dishes served on April 14, 1912. These kitchens were a machine of efficiency, built to feed more than 200 passengers and crew. First-class guests enjoyed elaborate multi-course meals, complete with delicacies like oysters and fine roasts, while second-class dined on hearty fare, and third-class received simpler but filling dishes like soups and stews. The photograph reveals more than food preparation, it reveals pride. The chefs and cooks posed with dignity, knowing they were part of something historic. Yet their triumph would end in tragedy, many of them trapped below decks when disaster struck. Their workrooms, once filled with the aroma of bread and broth, became silent chambers as the sea poured in. To look at this image now is to see more than a kitchen. It is to witness a fleeting snapshot of life, labor, and dedication aboard a ship fated never to reach her destination. Luxury of first-class cabins. Titanic's first-class cabins were designed to be floating palaces, spaces where the world's wealthiest travelers could live in unmatched comfort even while at sea. Photographs of these rooms reveal polished wood paneling, ornate furnishings, and thick, plush bedding that rivaled the finest hotels of the age. AI restoration has sharpened these images further, exposing tiny, personal details left behind by their occupants, a folded letter resting on a desk, an open jewelry case on a dresser, a pair of gloves neatly placed beside a mirror. These touches remind us that the cabins were not just showcases of luxury, but living spaces filled with hopes, secrets, and routines. To their owners, they symbolized privilege and status, private sanctuaries where one could retreat from the world. But on the night of April 14, 1912, those same rooms became cages holding passengers who delayed escape, believing Titanic could not sink. Many never left their cabins alive. Today, enhanced photographs allow us a glimpse inside these intimate spaces where life once flourished in comfort and extravagance. They are haunting reminders that even the richest surroundings could not shield anyone from the icy fate that awaited in the dark waters of the Atlantic. Officers at the table. A rare photograph of Titanic's officers' mess captures a scene of calm routine before the storm. Uniformed men sit around a neatly set table, their expressions relaxed, their world still secure.